my name's LJ, and today I am going to be discussing books. Today I'm going to be talking about Dragonwatch, Master of the Phantom Isle by Brendan Mull. This is the third book in the Dragonwatch series, and it's by far the best one yet. If you don't know what Dragonwatch is, it's the sequel series to the Fablehaven series, and the Fablehaven series is this fun fantasy series about a brother and sister who encounter all these magical creatures. I would highly recommend it. It's my favorite series of all time. I just want to apologize ahead of time for this atrocious lighting and audio, but as I was saying, this is definitely the best book in the Dragonwatch series. I think a big part of what made this book so great is we really explore sides of Kendra and Seth that we haven't seen before. They've changed a lot since we've met them the first time, and their dynamic is very different. I also really enjoyed the location change. It was really cool to see such a different preserve than what we're used to, and it really mixed things up. Also, my main problems concerning the first two books seem to have disappeared in this one. I am just full on enjoying it. Of course, I do have one issue, and it really isn't that big of a deal. It's just, how long has it been? What part of the year it is? In the Dragonwatch series, we really haven't covered how many weeks have passed, what part of the year it is, because I know in the original series we always knew if it was like summer, winter, how long it had been since the last book, and this one has only been 2 years since the first Fablehaven book. It hasn't even been a full year since the fourth Fablehaven book, which is crazy. That aside, I really enjoyed this. It was my most anticipated book of this year. Highly recommend it. I'm going to be discussing spoilers now, so if you haven't read this book, please leave. I don't want you to be spoiled for the amazingness that is Fablehaven and Dragonwatch. Now that we're in the spoiler section of this video, I want to touch more on the location setting. I love Wormwood. Fablehaven book 4 is my favorite book of all time, and that's when they go to Wormwood for the first time. But Wormwood has kind of become our home base. It just doesn't have the same feel to it as it did in Secrets of the Dragon Sanctuary. Maybe it's because we're well protected, we're always there now, and there's not as much mystery surrounding the preserve as there used to be. I just don't think it will ever be the same as it was in that Fablehaven book. I think leaving Wormwood was the best for the story. Wrath of the Dragon King, the book previous to this, ended on a huge cliffhanger. Reading that cliffhanger a year ago and knowing that I had to wait indefinitely how long to see what happens next was not fun. Picking up right where we left off in Wrath of the Dragon King was amazing. Reynard the Dark Unicorn has taken Seth to the Underrealm. The Underrealm is home to the Underking. The Underking wants to talk to Seth. Seth literally has to walk in backwards, because if you look at the Underking or into the Underking's eyes, you turn into one of the undead. We learned very on that Ronadin and the Underking aren't really on the same side. The Underking is definitely someone mysterious who I do not like and I do not trust. And because Ronadin is kind of afraid of the Underking himself, I almost found myself kind of relieved when we were around Ronadin, because he always gives Seth advice and seems knowledgeable. He doesn't seem full-on evil, even though he's committing these evil acts. We see him through Seth's point of view, who doesn't have his memories, and he doesn't really know what to think or who to trust. So I kind of want to like Ronadin, but also at the same time I hate him. It's really conflicting. I thought Ronadin and Seth's relationship was very interesting in this book. It's almost like they're on the verge of being friends. There's just something there holding them back. Remember, if something goes wrong, if you need anything at all, you're absolutely on your own. Seth had no reply. It was possible Ronadin was trying to use humor to relax him, but Seth suspected he was simply apprenticed to a jerk. I think that sums up their relationship pretty well. We get another new point of view in this book with the addition of Tess, which I wasn't really surprised by because we got Nox in the last book. Something that bothered me at the beginning of the book is I think the pacing was a bit odd, and maybe it was just because our 4 point of view characters were separated. We'd get a chapter from Seth's point of view, and then Kendra, and then Nox, and then Tess, and then it would repeat. It was really annoying going back and forth between these 4 storylines, and I was really afraid that was going to last for the entire book, but thankfully it didn't. I did like seeing her point of view. My theory about Tess being fairy struck proved to be true, which I was thrilled about. I really wanted to have a conversation with Kendra about it. I'm not even sure if Kendra knows that Tess is fairy struck, but I think that'd be really nice, and if anyone can relate to that, it's Kendra. Tess befriends Eve, which really excited me because I love both of their characters. I really wish we got more of Eve in this book. I mentioned in my review of Wrath of the Dragon King, I just love Eve. I always want her around, but I'm just glad she was at least in this book, and I hope her role increases. Even Tess visit the Dragon Dramatis from the first book. He warns them that there's an attack planned on the keep. They share this info with everyone, and they're not really sure what to think, because the entirety of the first book trying to get the scepter to fully protect the keep. They don't know what attack it could be, what they could be planning. And I thought, oh my gosh, there's a traitor among us. It's Cowlin, isn't it? And I thought maybe it would be Brunwyn, the Minotaur from the first book, but that didn't really make a lot of sense. We haven't seen much of him or Henrik since the first book, and I really don't think we're gonna see more of them. They were just kind of there to help us get acquainted with Wormwood. Meanwhile, Kendra is grieving the loss of Seth in addition to Bracken, and she just starts to get angry. Completely different side of Kendra I don't think I've ever seen before. It was really sad to see her being so upset and just not caring about protecting the preserve. Seth sets off to complete this mission where he has to go through the barrel to the keep, and I thought there would be someone waiting for him that's like the traitor, like I was talking about earlier, but it's the Sphinx, and they spared your life at the end of the last Fablehaven book when they could have killed you, and this is how you repay them? So the Sphinx takes Seth to the room with the chain, and I just lowers the chain and releases all the undead creatures down there. As they're leaving, they run into Agate, who just has this look that's filled with disappointment towards Seth, and Seth doesn't really know what he's doing. It was such a sad parallel to when Agate and Seth first met in that room with the chain, where Agate said, "You can never lower this. There's evil creatures down here. It would be disastrous. It could bring down the whole preserve." Right then is when I knew that something was going to happen to Agate. So our crew has to flee from the undead, and they're trying to find safety, and they run straight into Celebrant. And Kendra has no choice but to surrender to him. It's really awful to see this. Everything's hopeless, and Agate allows Celebrant to kill him so he'll spare the rest of them. It was so sad seeing Celebrant kill Agate. I've always seen Agate as this wise and knowledgeable person who knows what to do. He's the Dumbledore of Fablehaven. After Agate dies, Celebrant's going to still kill the rest of them and not show mercy. Tess, this 10-year-old girl, is among them. But then, out of nowhere, comes this wizard, and it turns out it's Dramatis, and he knows the process of turning himself into a wizard, and he did it, and he saves them. I loved this, and he's someone we ended up being able to trust, and I love that he turned into a wizard. I really loved how his story played out. And he transports everyone to Thronus the Sky Giant. Now, Thronus doesn't really do anything but provide them shelter. It just kind of seemed out of character for him to me. Because last time we met him, he was like threatening to eat them, and it only took a lot of persuasion from Seth and the promise that he would get these figurines, that he spared them. He was getting something out of this. In this case, Thronus really isn't getting anything out of this, and he just seems like so willing to help them and provide them places to sleep, and it was just odd to me. They all go to the preserve, Crescent Lagoon, which I really liked. I thought it was so cool seeing all these creatures in like a tropical island setting. Warren and Vanessa return in this book, which got me so excited because we haven't seen them since the actual Fablehaven series, and I was really disappointed we didn't get them in the first two books. They are my favorite characters after Kendra and Seth. I love them so much, and I love adventuring with them. Warren and Kendra hug, and then we get this line. Somebody who cared about Seth almost as much as she did had arrived. I loved that line. It really brought me back. I love Warren. I missed him. Although I did enjoy having them around, we're just kinda there. It was very disappointing to me considering Vanessa had such a great storyline I loved in the original series, and here she was really just there. Same with Warren. I feel like their presence was just kind of just so they could be there. They did stuff, but they didn't do anything significant. We did get a few good dialogue moments, and I wish we had more of that. He probably knows we're here, Vanessa said. Anyone careful enough to have barriers like these will have systems in place to detect intruders. He might be listening to every word we say. Coming in, Warren called. Friends paying a neighborly call. Charming, Vanessa said. Seth is really struggling with his identity, which it's fair considering, he doesn't have his memories. It was really hard watching Seth and not recognize things and people and names. He doesn't even know if Kendra is his actual sister, if he's just being lied to. A really heartbreaking moment is when he goes to see this prisoner who supposedly knows him, and immediately I knew it was going to be Bracken. Bracken tries to tell Seth who he really is and the kind of person he is, and Seth doesn't believe him. Another thing I really found interesting, I feel like I'm using the word interesting a lot, but whatever, how Ronaldin described the preserve. He called the dragon sanctuaries dragon prisons. I think that's a really unique perspective and really adds to the antagonist of the series, and it also makes perfect sense why the Sphinx is with him and helping him. It fits very well with his character. One of my favorite parts of this book is when we finally see Kendra and Seth together again. It's really odd because this is the only moment they are actually together in this book. Their dynamic is so foreign because Seth doesn't remember all the adventures they had together. Kendra is trying to tell him she shouldn't be listening to Ronaldin, and Seth is unsure of what to think. I talked to wraiths and phantoms, Seth said. You have dark powers, Kendra said. You never use them for evil, at least not when I knew you. I'm not trying to do anything wrong, Seth said. If you're so good, why were you holding all of those undead creatures and prisoners in a well? Because they're dangerous, Kendra said. You lock up anything you decide is dangerous, Seth asked. Dragons? What else? Those preserves protect magical creatures from the outside world, Kendra said. They also protect the outside world from the creatures. Ronaldin calls them prisons, Seth said. And I think that's a very interesting take on the preserves, and I'm excited to see where that goes. In order to get his freedom from the Underrealm, Seth has to go on all these errands from his Underking. So he has to get this Everbloom, and so he talks to this phantom in order to get information on it, and he ends up owing her a favor, and I can't help but thinking, Seth keeps making these deals and stuff. The favors he owes people just keep piling up, and it's getting to a ridiculous point. I'm really kind of concerned on how that's gonna go. Some of my continuity issues with the last book, I think I don't have as much of an issue with them anymore. The main thing was Seth's immunity to dragon fear apparently doesn't exist anymore. When Ronaldin was trying to teach Seth how to do cool, dark things with his powers, he was saying the ability to withstand this dragon fear, you have it, you just have to use it. It still isn't exactly the same as it was described in the original series, but it's a bit better. Another thing I enjoyed was Nox asking about their grandparents, how they supposedly died, and there was this like crazy story. They were in witness protection or something like that, and they were alive the whole time. And I loved the acknowledgement of that because it was really confusing when Nox and Tess just showed up and they don't know about preserves, but they know that their grandparents are still alive. More on Nox, I have very mixed feelings about him. I like him alright, he's cool. I liked his comments about Texas, I thought those were funny. But I don't understand the purpose of his character. Similarly with Tess, what does he really add to this story? I mean, he at least has an actual like ongoing storyline, unlike Vanessa and Warren, but it just doesn't seem really relevant to what's going on around them. His main thing is his fault that the barrel was stolen and Seth got kidnapped, and he's feeling a lot of guilt over that, and he wants to kind of redeem himself. So that's kind of his main motivation. Everyone's given this potion where they can go underwater and basically just walk like it's oxygen. And they encounter a bunch of mermaids and then this sea-type demon who captures everyone but Nox. And Nox realizes he can either run or he can go and save them all. And he does it with that bag of winds, I think, and the unicorn horn. I thought this was a bit unbelievable because Kendra and Seth aren't even able to kill demons until they get the sword Vasilis in the last Fable Haven book, which is a big feat in itself. Demons are not things that just can be killed like that. Like, it was the first time we saw a demon killed on an occasion like this, and I think based on the way they were built up in the previous series, it shouldn't have been that easy. But also, it was a really great moment for Nox, and I enjoyed that. And that was his big moment. I wonder if Nox is going to become something. Like, Kendra's fairy kind, Seth is a shadow charmer, and now Tess is fairy struck. Maybe. I also really wanted to see more of Nox and Seth's relationship, because we only really got that in the first book. And that was when they were, like, messing around, and Nox didn't even know that preserves are real. And we didn't really get that post Nox finding out, and then Seth lost his memories. And I want to see more of his relationship with Tess, but he did get some great moments with Kendra that I liked. Seth goes to see the hidden sage. His name is Gabrinco. And this is in hopes of receiving help or advice in regards of his memory issue. And this is when Calvin reveals himself. And he's been missing up to this point. All that did for me was add to that, oh no, Calvin's a traitor thing. I don't want Calvin to be a traitor, but also I've been like suspecting it. I've been suspicious since book 1. Calvin is the one who convinces this hidden sage guy to help Seth, that Seth's a good person. A big thing that made me not trust Calvin was the fact that Bracken didn't read his mind, but this hidden sage, I feel like we can trust, reads Calvin's mind, so it seems alright. The demon that took Seth's memories has a lovely name, which is Humbuggle, and he's at the preserve Titan Valley in New Zealand. And at this preserve is where Calvin's true love just also happens to be. Awfully convenient. This preserve is a bit strange as the caretaker is the Queen of Giants, one of the 5 monarchs. These monarchs are definitely coming into play. I remember them being mentioned in book 1 and I was like, are these going to be relevant? And they definitely are. The crowns are going to somehow come together in some way. I don't know, but I thought it was very interesting how the Underking offered both Kendra and Seth his crown. I don't know what's going to come of that, but I really just love Calvin. I full on trust him now, and I'm glad to have him. For being my favorite character, I don't think I've talked about Kendra nearly as much as I should have. I really enjoyed her at the beginning with her bow and arrow, but I think the big thing with Kendra in this book is she goes to the Fairy Queen's shrine, and she talks about how she wants to save Seth and Bracken, and she literally gives Kendra her crown so she can save Bracken. The Fairy Queen had that much faith that Kendra would succeed. Kendra has to go to the Phantom Isle by herself. Kendra gets there and then she has to put on this crown and it just illuminates her light and she's able to get by all these undead and dark things guarding this Phantom Isle. And the fairy says this, the darkness is so close now, let's go light it up. She's able to get by these dark creatures because of this light radiating from the crown and her. And the light depends on her confidence. And seeing Kendra have such a large amount of this confidence was amazing. It showed such character growth and I loved it. I loved seeing her not being afraid. And then she goes to see the Underking. She ends up being able to look at him and not become undead. I thought it was really interesting that she went there in this dark place when she's fairy kind and has this bright light. The Underking made her promise not to tell anyone of this occurrence. It felt like a parallel to Dragonwatch Book 1, where Seth goes into the fairy realm, this place of light where he has the darkness, he's not supposed to be there, and encounters the Fairy King and doesn't tell anyone about it. So I'm wondering if those are going to correlate with each other. Nobody would rescue her here. It was up to her to save Bracken and Seth, and to save herself. She'd already had all the help she was going to get. The Fairy Queen had given her the crown, which meant the Fairy Queen believed she could succeed. You have all of this wrong, Kendra said, her light growing. I didn't come here to ask you for anything. I came here to tell you what I am taking. I'll destroy anyone who gets in my way, including you. Show yourself. And she's able to get Seth's freedom from the Underrealm, and she goes to Bracken to free him. And then Ranadin shows up. The reason why he wanted all of Bracken's horns was to corrupt them all and see if it could turn Bracken dark. He had Bracken's horn from the Font of Immortality. So did he need to destroy that artifact? Didn't Agate hide it again? So Bracken's able to turn back into a horse again. And him and Ranadin have a full-on fight in their unicorn forms. This was a bit hard for me to picture unicorns fighting with their horns like swords, but you know, it was pretty climactic, so it was fine. Bracken said, even if my horns were corrupted, I would still be who I am and I would never turn dark. And Kendra and Bracken are able to get away. Seth is off to get the Everbloom and we get his last interaction with Ranadin. And Ranadin is kind of aware that Seth might betray him. He doesn't go through with taking the Everbloom in the end, and I knew that was gonna happen. I knew he wasn't gonna go through with the dark thing. There was this quote at the beginning of the book which I really liked. I have no choice, Seth said. In this matter, no, Ranadin said. I'm not a bad guy, Seth asserted. How do you know, Ranadin asked. I just know, Seth said. Calvin's with him, and I really liked having Calvin by his side. You gave me smart advice. I can start by making a good choice right now. This flower helps fuel these islands. It's exquisite. I don't want to harm it, or the creatures that depend on it. I want to like myself, Calvin. I want to make choices I can live with. I'm going to do everything I can to protect this flower, Seth said. The idea feels good, and maybe doing that will get me killed. But taking the flower to Ranadin might also lead to my death, and I'd rather die liking myself than hating myself. Honestly, something I was a bit afraid of going into this book is that Seth was just going to get his memories by the end and they'd all be back together, and that just felt too easy. Yes, I do want him to get back with everyone. I just feel like we can't make this extremely easy. There has to be some difficulties. I don't want other people to decide who I am, Seth said. I want to decide that for myself. You deserve to know your past, Calvin said. And after I know, I get to choose what comes next. Seth decides he needs to be on his own and decide everything for himself and not have all these people telling him who he is. And I really think that's what he needed. Of course, we still have Calvin with him, and I love that Calvin's with him. And they go to Titan Valley. And I loved this moment where he writes in the sand, Calvin lives, Titan Valley. And honestly, I kind of would have liked if the book just ended there with that message. Kind of a cliffhanger ending, but not really a cliffhanger. Kendra and Bracken come back, and I'm so glad to finally have Bracken back. They get the message from Seth, and then they're like, all right, guess we're going to New Zealand. Now I just have so many questions. There's so many things going on. We still have the Fall of Wormroast and Celebrant out. And we also still have these fair folk who refuse to break the neutrality, and that's just been built upon so much. We are definitely seeing more of them. This is by far my favorite in the series, and I can't believe there's only 2 books left. Thank you for watching. Let me know your thoughts. My name's LJ, and I like talking about books and stuff. She goes